You've always lived between two worlds, and your inner vision is finally waking up. You've always felt it, that strange electricity behind certain moments, that pause in reality that no one else noticed, that unspoken knowing that something or someone was watching you from inside. You weren't hallucinating, you were perceiving. Your inner vision was trying to wake up. Since childhood, you've lived between two worlds, not metaphorically, vibrationally. The visible and the invisible, the physical and the energetic, the outer illusion and the inner truth. And right now, something inside you is shifting, because this video didn't find you by accident. It found you because your third eye is stirring, because your soul is remembering the ancient technique that once allowed you to pierce the veil and see beyond the illusion. You've always had this gift, but no one taught you to use it. No one showed you how to recognize the signs. The shiver when no one touches you, the moment of silence that stretches beyond time, the flicker in your vision when you're alone in the dark. These aren't glitches, they're signals. They're echoes of the vibrational code that's already begun reactivating your subtle perception. You don't need to become anything, you just need to remember. Because what's awakening in you is older than any school, any book, any system. It's the forgotten ritual of vision, a memory carried in your frequency, not your mind. And the one who guarded this truth was not a myth. He was an architect of consciousness. Thoth, also known as the scribe of the gods, the one who understood how to write, not with ink, but with vibration. Thoth didn't teach techniques, he taught remembrance. Because spiritual awakening is not something you chase, it's something you allow. And now, you're allowing it. Because something in you is ready to see, not with your eyes, but with the part of you that never stopped watching. Welcome. You're exactly where you were meant to be. Chapter 1. You were never fully here. You've always lived between two worlds, but only now are you starting to see both. From the beginning, something felt off. You looked at the world, but didn't fully believe it. You listened to the noise, but felt something underneath it. You followed the rules, but knew they weren't real. You weren't distracted. You were resonating elsewhere. Because you were never fully here. You've always lived between two worlds, the one they told you was real, and the one your soul never forgot. The world of matter, form, and explanation, and the world of energy, vibration, and silent perception, the outer world and the inner frequency. And now, the separation is dissolving. You're starting to remember what you used to feel so clearly, that there is another layer beneath everything, a second skin to reality, a frequency behind the form. You were taught to ignore it, to explain it away, to trust only your senses. But now, your inner vision is beginning to speak again, and you can no longer pretend not to hear it. These weren't symptoms, they were signs. That chill that came out of nowhere, that sudden sense that time was slowing down, that dream that felt more real than your waking life. These were not accidents. They were not imagination. They were perception, subtle perception. The early signals of a third eye activation. The first pulses of an ancient vibrational code trying to make itself known again. You weren't malfunctioning. You were crossing the veil. Even before you knew what a veil was, you were touching its edges, feeling the field beneath the facts, sensing the truth behind the noise. And every time you ignored it, every time you doubted yourself, a piece of you dimmed. But it never disappeared. Because the spiritual awakening doesn't begin when you learn something new. It begins when you stop denying what you've always known. Thoth knew this truth, that reality has two layers. The ancient initiates, the masters of inner vision, the scribes of forgotten temples, They all said the same thing. The visible world is just a shadow of something deeper. Thoth, the one who gave form to the formless, never said you must escape the world. He said you must see through it. To pierce the veil, to live between two worlds, and know how to walk in both. That's what you're doing now. You're re-entering the space where inner perception lives, where your body receives one version of reality, but your soul hears another. That feeling you're having, that pressure between the eyebrows, that rising sense that something invisible is pulsing around you, that's not random. That's your inner vision starting to pulse. That's your system tuning itself to a frequency that was always here, but buried under noise, logic, and conditioning. You were never disconnected. You were just silenced. And now the silence is breaking, because you're finally aligned enough to feel what's been waiting for you just behind the curtain of form. The awakening has already begun, with or without your permission. You didn't need to meditate for 20 years. You didn't need to memorize mantras. You didn't need to chant in temples. You only needed to notice. Notice the shift. Notice the signals. Notice the subtle perception you've ignored for too long. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are perfectly timed. Because this moment, this activation, was always written. And now you're here. No longer fully in one world or the other, but in the place where the two realities merge. This is the crossing point, the seam in the veil, the space between breaths, between thoughts, between illusions. This is the moment your inner vision starts to rise, and in the next chapter, you'll discover how to make it not just a moment, but a permanent lens of perception. Chapter 2. The inner vision was never a metaphor. The third eye is not a symbol, it is a structure, and its blueprint is the Eye of Horus. They told you the third eye was mystical, symbolic, a poetic idea for intuition or imagination. But that was the first layer of the illusion. Because the third eye is not a metaphor. It's a mechanism, a structure, a living gateway between your mind and your multidimensional perception. And its true form was never hidden. It was carved in stone across ancient Egypt, painted in gold on temple walls, etched into your subconscious through lifetimes. The ancients didn't call it the third eye. They called it the Eye of Horus. And they weren't just referring to mythology, they were pointing to anatomy. The Eye of Horus, a map of the brain, a portal of the soul. Modern science has confirmed what mystics already knew. The Eye of Horus, when overlaid on a cross-section of the brain, perfectly matches the structures responsible for inner vision. The pineal gland, the thalamus, the corpus callosum, the limbic system. The ancients weren't guessing. They were encoding. They knew the vibrational code that activated these centers. They knew how to awaken the subtle perception that sees not with the physical eyes, but with the eye behind the eyes. This is the Eye of Horus. Not a story, not a religion, a spiritual technology, and it lives inside you. The third eye is the bridge between two worlds. When your third eye awakens, you don't suddenly see magical creatures or hallucinations. You begin to perceive what has always been here, but hidden beneath the noise. You begin to sense the energy behind a smile, feel the frequency of a room, know truth before it's spoken. Your awareness shifts from surface to structure, from appearance to essence. This is spiritual awakening in its purest form, not as an idea, but as a change in how you see. You no longer just observe with your eyes. You feel with your field. You scan with your soul. And every time you place your attention on the space between your eyebrows, that sacred center where the Eye of Horus resides, you are tuning into your original perception. This is why the eye was hidden. It gives you power. The Eye of Horus was feared by those who controlled the outer world, because once you activate it, you stop believing illusions. You stop obeying the programming. You stop reacting to false light. You begin to see beyond the illusion. That's why the ancient technique of vision was kept secret. hidden in ritual, encoded in myth, preserved in frequency. Because this type of sight is not for the curious, it's for the aligned. To pierce the veil is to strip away the filters, to look at reality and see the energy beneath the mask. And this power, when misused, distorts. But when activated through silence, breath, and intention, it becomes the purest compass of consciousness. Inner vision doesn't arrive loud. It emerges like light. It won't announce itself. It won't shout. It will arrive slowly, in the stillness, in the breath, in the pulse behind your thoughts. And one day, you'll close your eyes and see, not darkness, not fantasy, but patterns, frequencies, truth. The Eye of Horus awakens not with effort, but with remembrance. You've always had this eye. You were born with it. You just stopped using it. In the next chapter, you will remember the vibrational code that opens this eye completely. Because the Eye of Horus is not just a lens, it's a receiver. And when tuned to the right frequency, it doesn't just see, it transmits. Chapter 3. Thoth's legacy was not a myth, it was a code, and the Eye of Horus was the interface. Thoth was never just a scribe. He was not a myth. He was a frequency architect, a guardian of hidden knowledge, not in books, but in codes. And the code he carried wasn't written in language. It was embedded in geometry, in breath, in the vibration of silence. He didn't teach through doctrine. He encoded instructions into symbols that bypassed the mind and spoke directly to the soul's intelligence. And of all his creations, there was one symbol more sacred than the rest. A symbol that wasn't just sacred, it was functional. The Eye of Horus, the original interface of inner vision. The Eye of Horus was the original code interface. What if I told you the Eye of Horus wasn't just a spiritual symbol, but a technological diagram of human consciousness? What if its curved lines weren't random, but vibrational vectors, each one pointing to a specific frequency field within your brain and energy body? The ancients didn't just draw the eye, they constructed it, piece by piece, line by line, each segment corresponding to sensory override, emotional memory, sound resonance, energetic vision, spiritual language, intuitive cognition. This was the code, and the Eye of Horus was its living interface. Thoth's teachings were vibrational blueprints. Thoth didn't write for the eyes. He wrote for the inner eye. His language was frequency. His alphabet was geometry. His message was encoded in the rhythms of reality itself. Every line in the emerald tablet, every glyph hidden in temple walls, was part of a vibrational code meant to reactivate the parts of your consciousness that had been shut down by time, trauma, and illusion. And at the center of this activation was inner vision. Not the kind you use to dream, but the kind you use to pierce the veil and see what truly moves reality beneath the surface. The eye was sealed until the code aligned. For centuries, the Eye of Horus remained closed. Not because it was broken, but because your frequency didn't yet match the code. This is why Thoth hid the truth. Because perception, when given too early, becomes distortion. And power, without alignment, becomes destruction. But now, your resonance is changing. The breath is deepening. The mind is slowing. The veil is thinning. And the ancient code, the one Thoth guarded, is aligning with the field of your awakening. The eye is beginning to open, not as a metaphor, but as a transmitter. The Eye of Horus is the antenna for Thoth's code. You don't read the code, you become it. You don't study the eye, you transmit through it. The Eye of Horus was never meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be activated. It is the crystalline center through which your third eye processes reality. It receives not just images, but energetic signatures, frequencies, patterns, encoded truths. And when you learn to sit in silence, to breathe with presence, to focus without force, you begin to tune the lens. You begin to unlock what Thoth encoded. As above, so below. As within, so without. As the eye awakens, so does the soul remember. In the next chapter, you'll discover the exact structure of this code, how silence, breath, and directed attention come together to form the vibrational lock sequence that reactivates the eye fully. Because the ancient technique wasn't just a legend, it was a map back to yourself. And now, you're ready to follow it. Chapter 4, the vibrational code that opens the portal. 3 sacred keys, 1 eye, and a portal hidden in plain sight. There is a code, not a metaphor, not a myth. A vibrational code that opens the ancient portal of perception and activates your inner vision. This code doesn't need electricity. It doesn't require technology. Because you are the technology. You were born with this system, with a center between your eyes and behind your thoughts, a silent antenna encoded into your brain and soul. We now call it the third eye. The ancients called it the Eye of Horus, and the eye only opens when you enter the sequence of alignment, the trinity of perception, the ancient technique that Thoth never shouted, but always whispered, in geometry, in breath, in rhythm. The portal will not open by force, only by frequency. You've felt it, the pressure in your forehead, the tingling when you meditate, the pulse when your mind grows still. That's not imagination, it's resonance. The Eye of Horus doesn't respond to belief, it responds to vibration. And the vibrational code that opens it is made of 3 sacred elements: conscious silence, sacred breath, directed attention. These aren't techniques, they are frequencies. And when activated together, they form a harmonic field, a portal interface that pierces the veil and initiates true spiritual awakening. Pillar 1. Conscious silence, the womb of perception. Silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of signal. Conscious silence is the pause between thoughts where the vibrational code first begins to form. It's the stillness behind the noise, the gap in the matrix, the crack in the facade. In this silence, the third eye begins to pulse. The Eye of Horus begins to glow. Because without silence, you cannot receive the code. The field is always speaking, but you must become still enough to hear it. Pillar 2, sacred breath, the bridge between worlds. Breath is the current, the carrier of light, the first language of the soul. When you breathe consciously, you're not just filling your lungs, you're aligning your energy field to receive the activation. Inhale, information enters. Exhale, illusion dissolves. The breath flows through the center of the third eye, clearing debris, resetting frequency, charging the Eye of Horus like a forgotten battery, rediscovering the sun. Thoth taught this silently, because the true power of breath is not in its volume, but in its presence. Pillar 3, directed attention, the lens that focuses light. Where your attention goes, your frequency follows, and where your frequency settles, activation begins. The Eye of Horus is not passive. It's a conscious receiver, but it needs focus to tune. When your attention rests on the center of your forehead, you are turning the key in the ancient lock. You are aligning your inner lens to pierce the veil and see what exists just beyond form. Without attention, the portal remains blurred. With attention, the signal sharpens, the subtle perception awakens, and you stop imagining and begin to see. When these 3 merge, the portal opens. When silence, breath, and attention move together, a vibration is born. a harmonic sequence, a living code. This is not visualization. This is not wishful thinking. This is the ancient technique hidden inside the body of every soul that was born to remember. And when this vibrational code aligns with your field, the third eye opens, the Eye of Horus activates, and the veil begins to dissolve. You don't force this, you tune into it. Like an instrument that has always known the melody, but needed silence to recall the song. In the next chapter, you'll finally see what happens when the code stabilizes and the Eye of Horus doesn't just open, but stays open. Because once the portal activates, a deeper awakening begins, and everything you thought was reality starts to unravel. Chapter 5. The forgotten ritual already lives inside you. And you've been performing it every night without knowing. You've been seeking a ritual, a method, a technique hidden by time, and yet you've already performed it thousands of times in silence, in darkness, with your body still and your soul slipping between the seams of this world and the next. Every night, as sleep begins to take you, you enter the first portal of perception, a liminal space, a sacred window, the exact frequency where the third eye begins to stir, where the Eye of Horus starts to glow from within. You call it falling asleep, but the ancients called it something else, crossing the veil. Dreams are not fantasy. They are training grounds. What if your dreams are not random? What if they are messages encoded in symbol delivered to your inner vision through the portal of your own stillness? You see entire landscapes, you feel emotion, you receive information, without eyes, without ears, without time. How is that possible? Because in those moments, your vibrational body becomes the lens, your subtle perception takes control, and your third eye, the Eye of Horus, becomes the only interface still active. This isn't fiction, it's function. It's the same forgotten ritual that initiates performed in temples, now reactivating in your sleep. The body carries the ancient technique. The ancient technique was never about robes, temples, or sacred oils. It was always about alignment. And your body was designed to align itself every time it releases control. The moment before sleep, when the mind loosens its grip, is the natural gateway to inner vision activation. The Eye of Horus begins to receive. The third eye pulses softly between dimensions. The vibrational code starts to rise like breath from the unconscious. You were performing the ritual. You just didn't know what it was. What happens when you stay awake inside the ritual? There's a secret within the secret. To witness the ritual consciously, to remain aware in the space where sleep and spirit meet. In that space, time dissolves, thought quiets, symbol becomes language, truth becomes visual. This is where Thoth encoded his teachings, not in scrolls, but in dream vision, not in doctrine, but in experience. Because only the one who is present within the forgotten ritual can receive its true transmission. You're not meant to escape the body, but to awaken inside it. The Eye of Horus is the liminal lens. This is the real purpose of the Eye of Horus, to see in the dark, to perceive not what the world shows, but what the soul knows. It is the lens that functions when logic sleeps. It is the organ of direct knowing. It is the interface between two worlds. And once it opens, you realize that dreams, visions, synchronicities, they were never anomalies. They were echoes from the real world, the one behind this one. The eye doesn't close after sleep. It lingers. It waits. And when you bring conscious attention to this window, you become the ritual. You don't perform it, you embody it. In the next chapter, you will understand what happens when this portal stabilizes, when inner vision becomes your dominant perception, and reality begins to rearrange itself according to what you see within. Because this isn't just a technique, it's a return to your original nature, and you're only just beginning to remember. Chapter 6. The veil guards itself, and those who try to cross must first face what they still carry. Every time the third eye begins to open, something else stirs. Not outside you, but from within. Because the veil doesn't just separate, it filters, it tests, and to truly pierce the veil, you must first encounter the guardians of your own frequency. Reflections of everything still bound to fear, doubt, illusion. This is the hidden truth of the spiritual awakening. Before you see what is truly there, you must face what you still believe is true. The guardians don't stop you, they mirror you. They don't appear as monsters, they don't block the portal with swords, they arrive as emotions. A thought, what if I'm just making this up? A feeling, what if I lose myself if I keep going? A voice, you're not ready, go back to sleep. These are not failures, these are the guardians of the veil. Your doubt, your fear, your impatience, your spiritual ego. Each one appears as a frequency test, not to push you away, but to see if you'll abandon yourself before remembering. Bez, the trickster who laughs at your illusions, the first to greet you, is often the most misunderstood. Bes, the dwarf god of dreams, protector of thresholds, sexuality, and the subconscious. To the unaware, he looks ridiculous. Wild hair, grotesque tongue, shaking tambourines and laughing. But to the initiate, he is the gatekeeper of altered states. He guards the liminal moment between sleep and vision. He stands at the doorway of the inner temple, asking with a grin, can you laugh at your fear before your fear devours you? Bez doesn't block your path. He reflects your repressed wildness, your shadow desire, your lost freedom. He teaches you, the veil isn't pierced through control, but through surrender. Serapis, the gate of integration and elevation. And once you pass through the trickster's mirror, a new presence emerges. Serapis, not a god of chaos, but of structure, not of resistance, but of ascension. Serapis is the bridge between dualities, human and divine, form and formless, body and light. He doesn't test your emotions, he tests your coherence. Do your thoughts match your heart? Does your path match your frequency? Does your desire for light come from love or from fear of the dark? He stands in silence, radiant, and waits. Only those who walk in truth, not perfection, but alignment, can pass his gate. Because Sarapis doesn't open the veil for the curious, he opens it for the committed. The Eye of Horus must face its own shadow. When the Eye of Horus begins to awaken within you, you may expect visions, insights, revelations. But what comes first is confrontation. The eye doesn't just show the truth around you. It reveals the unresolved layers within you. To activate inner vision, you must be willing to look at your attachments masked as purpose, wounds dressed as wisdom, ambitions pretending to be devotion. This is where most turn back, because real vision burns away illusion, and what remains is raw, sacred, and undeniable. These guardians live in your frequency. They don't live in other realms. They live in your resonance. When your vibrational code begins to stabilize, when your breath deepens, your attention sharpens, and your silence becomes alive, you begin to emit a different signal. That signal activates the veil, and the veil responds, not with rewards, but with initiation. And this is why Thoth encoded his teachings in mystery, because perception without maturity is madness, but perception with presence is revelation. In the next chapter, you will see what happens when the eye fully opens, not just for moments, but as a new default setting of perception. You will begin to feel not only what surrounds you, but what moves through you. Because once the guardians are faced, and your resonance is aligned, the eye becomes the field, and your reality begins to respond. Chapter 7. Once you see, you never unsee. The eye doesn't just perceive, it illuminates. There is a moment in every awakening when something irreversible occurs. The veil dissolves, not in a flash, but in a quiet, steady softening of the illusion. Suddenly, you don't just see people, you feel their fields. You don't just hear words, you sense their frequency. You don't just live in the world, you begin to live through it, with vision, with clarity, with something ancient pulsing between your eyes, the Eye of Horus, now fully open. But something else is rising too, a deeper flame, a radiant force, a solar intelligence that doesn't just see, but projects truth into the field. This is the essence of Ra, the inner sun, the divine observer, the one who sees without fear and shines without distortion. Ra and Horus, when perception and light become one. When the Eye of Horus is stabilized through silence, breath, and attention, it begins to align with the Eye of Ra, not as mythology, but as embodiment. You are no longer just witnessing truth, you are becoming a transmitter of it. You walk into rooms, and the energy shifts. You speak, and vibration leads your words. You feel, and the truth arrives before the thought. This is the fusion of vision and radiance. Horus sees, Ra shines. Together, they awaken the field. And now, they awaken in you. Reality responds to a stabilized field. Once your inner vision becomes active, reality stops being static. It becomes responsive. You are no longer a passive observer of life. You are a conscious participant in the vibrational ecosystem. Everything becomes a conversation. The tone of your thoughts, the precision of your breath, the stillness in your silence. They all send signals. They all speak to the fabric of existence, and the field answers. The code no longer needs activation. It becomes your nature. At this stage, the vibrational code that once felt like a ritual now becomes your baseline frequency. You are the Eye of Horus in motion. You are the light of Ra walking. You are the breath, the silence, the attention, not as practices, but as presence. Your decisions flow from resonance. Your words are charged with intention. Your body emits what it once tried to understand. This is not mastery. This is naturalization. You've remembered your origin, and now you radiate from it. You can't go back. You can only go deeper. Once the vision is opened, once you've crossed the veil, once the eye begins to see without closing, you don't return to the old world. You don't fit in the old systems. You don't react to shadows because you recognize them as echoes. And most of all, you no longer search outside for what your field already knows. You live differently. You listen differently. You see differently. Not because the world changed, but because you finally tuned to the layer that was always there. In the next chapter, you will discover what happens when this vision becomes your primary interface. When you no longer look for signs, but become the signal. Because once you embody this light, you begin to attract what belongs to your new frequency. And that changes everything. Final chapter. The vision was never gone, just unused. You didn't need to learn how to see, you needed to remember you always could. The vision was never gone, it was never taken. It never disappeared. It was simply unused, dormant, dimmed, buried beneath 1,000 programs that told you to look outward when everything you needed was already rising from within. You were never blind. You were trained not to look. But now, you are seeing from the place that sees without eyes. The Eye of Horus is no longer a symbol on stone. It's a living structure pulsing behind your brow. It receives, it transmits, it aligns. And the field, this vast matrix we call reality, no longer reflects your identity. It reflects your frequency. You are not inside this world. You are projecting into it. The code was always in you. Everything you've activated, the silence, the breath, the attention, the resonance, the surrender, the courage. It all formed the code, not a key to unlock something outside, but a mirror to awaken what was already within. Thoth never gave you the truth. He gave you the means to remember it. The Eye of Horus was never made to see for you. It was made to remind you that you already know. And now that it's open, there is no veil left to pierce, only deeper layers to illuminate. You are no longer seeking, you are seeing. Say the phrase, anchor the frequency. This vision is not a story. It's not a practice. It's a state. And if you felt something awaken during this journey, even if only a flicker, then the code has already begun its work. So now, speak the phrase. Say it out loud. Type it. Whisper it. Breathe it into the field. My inner vision has awakened. Let it anchor into your nervous system. Let it echo into your energy field. Let it signal to the grid. You remember. You are aligned. You are ready. Because the moment you declare it, you stop waiting for light and become it. Your path isn't over. It's just unlocked. You didn't finish a journey. You activated one. The next chapter begins where this video ends. There is more to see, more to remember, more to embody. So stay awake, stay inward, and trust that the eye will lead you, not forward, but deeper.